Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. And I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host in a faraway land, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, and of course, those dog-faced pony soldiers.
All right. So did you drive down to Louisiana then? Or
I am. I'm in Louisiana. My beautiful studio, well lit. Great.
we're, we're in our relax mode during the holidays, which I think we kind of do almost every year.
Yeah.
Like this and all that. So good Christmas.
Excellent Christmas. Much family and friends around. We had a great time laughing and talking. Great food, as always.
How's the weather?
It's kind of cool. It was in the 60s, and now it's kind of in the 40s and 50s. So a little bit better than there, but
yeah,
not enough.
Yeah, no, I mean, we were thinking like, when we can get into like the 50s here for Christmas, it's good.
Yeah.
Because I was kind of busy on Christmas Day running around doing stuff, and I didn't really think about it until late. I'm like, this is almost the perfect weather for this time of year for people who still want to get out. They can, even in the evening, it's still 45, 50 degrees. It's reasonable.
Yeah, you can handle that. There's a lot of like outdoor stuff going on here. So
yeah, it was the first time in years I actually was down by the Festival of Lights by the Washington D.C. Visitor Center and Temple, and so it's like, okay. I mean, we were there feeding some missionaries and whatnot, but when we left, it was only, I don't know, 5:30 or whatever. It's like people were streaming in. I mean, if you've driven by there, the Stony Brook, it's a 2-lane road. And when stuff like that happens, the traffic is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's right.
And everything. And it's like, okay. So I just will say this. I found out last night that so they count. There's usually somebody with like a little clicker, trying to register all the people who walk in the door. So they counted 9,700 people that walked through the door inside. And who knows how many people were outside that didn't go in, just wanted to see the lights outside. So I'm thinking like, yeah, that weather and a lot of other stuff just made for, and so the thing
I think people wanted to touch Christmas a little more this year.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was.
I mean, they've got a nice nativity. They have 150 different nativities, creches from around the world. So that's kind of neat to see. And they've got a bunch of Christmas trees inside that are decorated and whatnot. And then they have a performance every evening. But it's just like, I don't know. I mean, I remember going there decades ago, and you could go there on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day, and it was just the people who didn't really have a place to go. Yeah. Now it's like everybody's showing up. We're like, why aren't you with your families at home?
Yeah, I'll tell you what. So a couple of nights before Christmas, we went to Natchitoches, which is a little city. It's about 70 miles from here. It's the oldest town west of the Mississippi, and they have a Christmas festival, and they light up the whole. It's called the Cane River, which is it was a former. The Red River changed courses and left the Cane River there, and so it's on a river, and so all the way down this river / lake are Christmas lights, and I mean, and it's some of it is, but Bible verses. It's explicitly religious part of it, right? It's reason for the season, and but it's this beautiful light festival, and they have like people selling cocoa and this stuff on the banks of the lake and whatnot. And I mean, that was swarm. There were thousands of people there. It was like a, probably 60-degree night, so everybody out just enjoying it,
which is really nice to see that. We're not, wherever. I mean, there's lots of places in the country where they have these things that are going on. I mean, I just saw this article the other day. I may have posted it, about Steubenville, Ohio. Their town was going, they're just losing population, but they've kind of stemmed the flow a little bit because they created they have these humongous nutcrackers,
yeah,
and stuff. So you have all these things going on. And there was a story in the Wall Street Journal this just a couple of days, I guess it was over the weekend or something. There's a little area, and I think it's in Brooklyn, and it's lights. This known for its lights. Matter of fact, I think when you own the home, you actually have to agree that you're going to put up lights or something.
Oh, wow.
It's actually part of that. But there's as things change, as the older people move out, it's harder for the young people to think, I don't want to do that. So there's a little bit of pushback going on over there and stuff. So I think the article was focused on, just this little areas trying to save their long time tradition. But I don't know. I mean, I still remember, going back 50 plus years. Well, yeah, probably maybe even 55 years or whatever. When I was growing up in Silver Spring, we had a neighbor who every year they had one of the bigger houses, multi-level, and they always just outlined it with blue lights. That was it. It was really simple. Remember, Christmas back in the 60s and 70s, in a lot of cases, there were some simple things going on, right? Things have really ramped up over the last 20 years or so, and that thing was an attraction. You could, it's hard to get in and out of the neighborhood because cars were just always driving in and by, and then you had to get, so just even simple things like that going back, it just, people love it. I mean, I think there's something about it to the whole Christmas season. You just kind of put you.
What I read this thing. I've read this a couple of places too. But something like 92% of the people in America somehow celebrate Christmas. Right now, obviously, not 92% of the people in America are Christian. Right. So there's something about this season that, like, it's you give gifts, make people happy. It's a giving, sharing thing, and it shows you that, like, we're not as terrible as we think, right? We don't really hate each other as bad as it seems, right? There's a lot of people out there looking for outlets for good. So, I think it's really interesting what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, and as you say, 92%. I mean, it doesn't translate into church attendance and a lot of other things, but that's fine. People should, if they were just trying.
To me, that's up to the churches, right? When you're going to get a chance, right? People are going to come to church during Christmas and Easter that don't come any other time of year. So that's your chance to make it worthwhile, make it seem like something they would want to do more often. So
right. I mean, I we had our Christmas program last Sunday, and it was the most people we'd had in months.
Yeah, that's right.
Probably since Easter.
Yeah, that's right.
I walked in, I'm like, whoa, wait a minute, we're all, and you have for us, it's kind of like, college kids coming back and some other things, but I'm looking around, I was like, there are people I have never seen before. Maybe I don't know, and you can't tell. Some people, it's just that Christmas season, they almost feel like a pull. Churches are open. It doesn't make a difference what the denomination is. You can walk into a church, you'll find some kind of Christmas service at some, during the season. So it is somehow it just is a draw for them, and people will show up regardless. Yeah. They want to feel the spirit of the season.
That's right.
And everything. Well, that's good. All right. So, news is news and everything like this. But what I threw in here was that I don't think that we've really done this before, and I thought I really need to do this, is that each of us should talk about, say, top 3 stories for each of us for the year, and then we'll go to the top maybe 3 predictions we have for 2024 and see where we go. And I will admit, there'll probably be some recency bias.
Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead. You go with let's start with your top 3 stories for 2023. What would they be?
I think so. I had October 7th, I think, is the biggest story of the year. Tragic story, and it's led to a lot of realigning, right? The racists all came out and planted their flags, right? So we kind of know who they are now. We can all point at them. It's really been a sad commentary on human behavior. The number of people who support what happened there, who actually think that was a good idea or just in some way. I think the charges against Trump, the prosecution of Trump, I think was a big story. It's an unprecedented effort, and Biden promised that he was going to do this. He said he was going to make sure Trump cannot run again by what he called constitutional means. So it's a program of lawfare designed by the Biden people to keep Trump from running again, because I think now they're looking at the polling and so forth, and they know that if it's a fair election, they're not going to win. And my third one was, I guess the Hunter Biden charges are somewhat, but that's sort of that was going to happen and has been in the books for a long time. But the Speaker Mike, how a guy from where I am now is really like 2-3 blocks from where he grew up, is emerged out of this, quiet, sort of unassuming guy. All of a sudden, he's the guy, right? And McCarthy was out, and they coalesced around him, and now we have a speaker from Shreveport, which I just cannot get over. But so I think those were probably the biggest 3 stories to me.
Okay. All right. Well, I definitely agree with you. Yeah, those are all great stories. I mean, and definitely on the whole thing on October 7th, that whole, just as you were saying, it's just, I think we've known, conservatives have known about the left and their hatred. There's a lot of anti-Semitism, a lot of hatred for Israel, and how they just basically swallow pretty much anything that Hamas wants to do and go along with this. And we have definitely seen this. I mean, it's remarkable, how this happened. And I think this is a good thing, because I think for the longest time, I have been personally bothered by, the donors to the universities. These rich Jewish philanthropists
Right.
have poured tons of money into elite schools, their alma maters, and
It's
yet,
going to be a big change for academia, right?
yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, and so as a result of this, you're seeing even Bill Ackman is kind of the lead guy in this. Here's a guy who's just been front and center and has really been very, very vocal about what's been going on college campuses with regard to all of this, and shaken up the establishment as such, and maybe sets a new tone for how things are going to go forward. Is that these elite schools, these all this liberalness in academia, all this left-wing stuff, is undergoing a lot of pressure going forward, as to the status quo cannot stand as it has been, because I mean, what runs the schools? All this donor money, right? I mean, they
That's
need
right.
that donor money.
Billions of dollars are being moved away from Ivy League schools. I've done some development work in my life, and I'm telling you, the billions of dollars are moving away from you. The people are going to step in and change the trajectory.
Right, and I think that was obviously a huge part of why University of Pennsylvania dumped their president. I mean, she stays on the faculty as a law professor or whatever, but they get rid of her. And Harvard's she's on the edge. I mean,
I think that's a real battleground of our times type of thing, because not only is she did nothing about people threatening to kill Jewish students on campus and so forth like that, and actually well, it depends on the context. They were horrible at that hearing. You notice they're in a lot more trouble. We talked about this the last time we were on. They're in a lot more trouble than the MIT lady, because she kind of mathed it, right? She sort of if A equal B and B equals C, then A equals C. So it's like, okay, that's how MIT thinks. But the Harvard lady, she was smug. She, I'm not giving into this, depends on context, right? And now we found out that almost all her academic research is plagiarized, and things that other people have been harassed out of the university for, she's been allowed to get away with, and billions of dollars of donor money are walking out the door. I don't know if she survives. Harvard may not, right? Harvard, it's taken a huge reputational blow here. And I think they're going to have to, at some point, get rid of her, right? Push her off the mark. And that is a victory. That is you're running downhill after that, right? That moves a big logjam, because other schools are going to say, yeah, there's life after dumping your, leftist overlords.
Yeah. I mean, when I put together a piece for the campus report, I mean, I entitled it, Harvard Still Hates America. And, I used this, the lead, John Laboutier's book on Harvard Hates America, which actually was a little bit about Harvard, more about him. but whatever. If you're John Laboutier, I mean, he was a president of Accuracy in Academia for a while because of that book. My father was very enamored of this whole general thing, that he was into that, going back further in time. And but Laboot was very much about Laboot, so he was a one-term congressman, and he was an interesting guy, but and still probably is, but not kind of out of the spotlight. But you're right here. I mean, the thing for Harvard, I mean, they've been trying to say all these issues with the plagiarism, these are like minor things, and Claudine Gay has said, I want, I need the record, I need those things corrected, and has official, and
I just didn't cite it right. It's like, once or twice I gotcha, right?
Yeah.
Because I was working quickly, whatever. But like, this is most of her academic output is basically
right.
So, and it's weak. It's not. It's like, they said, hey, lady, you got to write a paper. So she came up with something. She cobbled together something and turned it in, right? It's not like research drives what she does. And there's a lot of people in academia that, they're there doing things other than publishing research. I get that. I understand that. Like my sister did it. She taught in the classroom, right? So, I mean, her thing was, I will carry a big classroom load, but I'm not trying to publish 82 books, right? Some people want to write books. So, yeah, I think that I think that they're going to have to do something about that. It cannot stand like it is now, because
right.
Then you're saying, okay, how can you ever punish anybody for plagiarism in Harvard, right? What is the rubric? I mean, what's the difference? How does the president get to do it and you don't? So, I think that they'll come away after Christmas with a nice check, and she's accepted a position somewhere else and be closer to family and blah, 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 blah. I guess she is from Haiti. Her family's a big in the concrete business in Haiti, right? So, that's part of why they don't want to get rid of her, is that, they have this connection to Haiti. So,
yeah. So, and I think what you were saying earlier about this is also extremely important, which is the reputational hit that Harvard's taking.
Right.
This is a cloud. This is a huge cloud that hangs over Harvard. I mean, Harvard is, has at least, for majority of people, kind of a sterling reputation in terms of this high level, academic school. Turns out some of the
people will do anything to get in there, right? I mean, you just got to remember Varsity Blues, right? There people were literally lying and cheating and bribing, and they're now in prison to try to get their kids into this particular school.
Right. Well, I mean, Pablo Torre, right? Formerly of ESPN. I mean, he went to Harvard. His parents are doctors, right? And so it was like they got him into Harvard. They wanted him to go to law school. And what is he doing? Something completely different, right? I mean, and now in an Asian culture, sometimes that's difficult to fathom. It's like, we spent all that money, getting you putting into Harvard, and you're reporting on sports, and now you've got a podcast. What the heck is all of this? But it's still, I mean, the fact that Pablo Torre went to Harvard tells me the guy's a pretty smart cookie, nevertheless.
Right.
Right. And so, I mean, I respect that a lot when I see that.
And that's getting damaged, right? That's part of what's taking a hit, is that you think someone who goes to Harvard is a smart cookie, right? You just do. And now it's like, well, now they're probably somebody who cheated or was a legacy or copied somebody else's paper, right? Because that's the leadership.
Yeah, and the thing is that when this happens, the Harvard Corporation, the people who run this, they needed to make this decision quickly. They needed to have a firm decision instead of this kind of what I consider mealy mouth, we back it, the vote of confidence type of issue, things like this. But the longer they let that linger, the doubts that surface hurts them every day a little bit more, and it just continues to build. The delay that they've had in keeping her around and just pussyfooting around with all of this is very damaging. If they had just cut bait, just go ahead, given her a check, told her to go away, or helped her find some other position somewhere else, they would have been a lot better off. They just move on, because the thing is, it's an overhang. It's just hanging over their head, and people are going to remember this. The longer
Yeah.
this goes on, the more people are going to remember it. They could have basically pushed this under the rug and gotten this take care of, and people over time would have forgotten about it. But this also gives the donors a chance to go back and pull more money out and make more noise. This is a terrible, terrible thing that they have handled it badly, about as
Yeah.
bad as you can handle at this point. And yeah, it's like you.
I think they
Claudine
made the
Day is a
bet
lame
that
duck.
like a lot of things in the news, it would die down, right?
Yeah,
It would just we just wait a while, no one will care anymore. But the longer it goes on, the worse it is, and a lot of that has to do with Chris Rufo and others exposing her academic scandal.
right. And you mentioned MIT. I think MIT. To me, I mean, I don't consider this this is a school of really math, nerdy brainiac guy people, things like this. I don't consider this a very activist school. You may have activists on there, but it doesn't have the same type of activist reputation as other schools in the Ivy League and other schools around the country, and you can deal with that. I mean, you said she kind of mathed it out, and we're not talking about her. I mean, we're talking about her now, but basically, she's forgotten in this thing. UPenn McGill is out. Gay is now the focus. I don't think if Gay goes, that the focus is really going to shift back to MIT necessarily. I think there are others that they could look at besides that. And the worst performances were by McGill and by Gay anyway.
Right.
The congressional hearings.
Right.
So.
Yeah, McGill
All right.
was awful.
Yeah, she was. So, I agree with you on this on October 7th and Hold. But but in that case, what I'll do is I'll throw in 3 other stories that I thought were interesting this year. So I'm going pop culture. Taylor Swift and who marries her. I mean, to me, you can't ignore the economic impact of this woman. I don't listen to a lot of music, not like I used to when I was a kid. But over $1 billion on her tour. Just the things that people will go through to that, and then we have the after effect. This now with the whole Travis Kelce thing like this, it's just amazing the attention. I mean, if she does anything now, I mean, she was wearing the little Christmas hat with with Kelce's number on it and everything like this. How much does she account for in the economy of things that people will buy?
Yeah.
Just loads and loads of
huge
stuff.
I mean, I remember when they named her Person of the Year, Time Magazine's Person of the Year, and a lot of people go, oh, I'm like, she made more news than anybody this year, more than any other single person this year. I mean, you could make the case for some other people, but she was in the news almost the entire year, making news, doing her thing. And she's extremely popular.
Yeah,
I think I do. One thing I do think is interesting though is like she has made a big point, and people on our side have groused about this of signing up voters. Grateful Dead does that, right? They've done that for decades, right? We have a voter registration guy outside. Go see him on the way out if you're not registered to vote, and they don't tell you who to vote for. They don't come in on one side or the other. They just say, it's what's going on out there is important and you need to weigh in. So you go vote. So the assumption is anybody at a Taylor Swift concert or a Grateful Dead concert or whoever else, is a leftist. So you're adding to the leftist vote total. But since this has happened, the percentage of people under 30 who say they're going to vote for Trump has done nothing but go up. And he's now passed Biden among under 30 voters, which is incredible. If Trump is anywhere close, if he's within 10 points on election day of under 30 voters, Biden has no chance. That's a huge swing. And, it was, what did he get? About 25% in 2016 when he won. So if he's getting 50, that's a big problem for Biden. And it's done nothing but go up since she's been out signing up voters. So thank you, Taylor Swift.
Yeah, and I don't know. Sometimes I think there's a little bit too much played up about these voter registration drives that it's driving one side or another. I mean, it's, maybe some concert goers, have lean heavily to one side or whatever. To me, I mean, Taylor has been, she's been out there and had her political opinions, which our side generally doesn't agree with. But there are a lot of people who go to her because they love her music and they love her performances and what she does on stage. And it's politics aside. They put that aside and they're like, they're not spending hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, on these because they believe in her politics.
One of my dads took his daughter on my team to one of the concerts, and he said it was $243 a ticket. And I don't know if he bought, aftermarket or whatever, but I mean, that's a lot of money to see a concert.
Yeah. I mean, you can spend a lot of money and you still are way, way back. I mean, you have to spend tons of money to get close.
Yeah.
She is just a phenomenon, and I give her credit for that.
Yeah.
For all of that. It's kind of hard to believe she's only 33. It's just, we've been watching her since she was like 16 or something.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing. All right. Another story that I thought was the presidential aspirations of Ron DeSantis.
That has been an interesting story too.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning of the year, I would have said, hey, I mean, I think a lot of people think like he was going to be a strong contender. He was going to, if Trump was jumping into the race and all this stuff, that he would give Trump a run for his money. But, he's now in third place in a lot of polls, and he's really struggling to maintain, viability in the race. And so you've got an interesting, thing going on there. He's going to stick it out, but the field is not as big as it was before, but he still has an uphill battle.
Well, he's put all his ducks in the basket of Iowa.
Yeah.
So if he, and his supporters are on there, he's secretly going to win. I'm like, okay, he's 40 behind, but pollsters are wrong sometimes. They're not usually 40 behind wrong, but but I think if he doesn't come through in Iowa, if he doesn't make a big splash in Iowa, he has to get out. And I think his money's drying up. I think the people who are working for him are, starting to jump ship to go to other campaigns and so forth. And I don't think there's really much left of the primary season on the Democrat side. On the Republican side, doesn't seem like anybody can coalesce gather up all the anti-Trump support out there. And I think if you stack up all the anti-Trump, it's about 25 or 30%, and most of those people got to come home. They're not going to vote for Biden or whatever crook the other side comes up with. So, I mean, I think that, and it's like, Nikki Haley, Vivek, I think is an interesting candidate because, he knows he's not going to win. So he's throwing some flames, right? He's sticks it to the media in a way that we've never had a candidate, even Trump, who sticks it to the media with the vigor and the delight that he does, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, so yeah, I agree. I think the race is more or less over unless we get some huge surprise out of Iowa that keeps these guys really live. But money fuels the game, and if they don't do well in Iowa, it's going to.
Well, Nikki's her play was for New Hampshire.
Because she
technically, he's got to win. Knock out DeSantis in Iowa and Nikki in New Hampshire, and if that occurs, then I think that the rest of the primaries are kind of perfunctory.
Right. All right. And then my final thing is one of my favorite topics that I've talked about all year long are EVs. So, we have seen a complete turnaround this year on EVs. All the automakers, were jumping in head first. They're like, we're going to make these EVs. We're going to go all EV. We're going to be basically all EV by 2035. We're going to follow, the Biden, all these dictums, and that say that we're, internal combustion engines are bad and we got to get rid of them. And so they were falling all over themselves to make EVs. Ford is losing $36,000 per EV that they sell. And so what we've now seen is a reversal by a lot of these companies. GM said, they're going to basically plow more money back, to the shareholders and other things, and reduce, their EV investment. Ford has had, they've been doing a rethink. So you're seeing all of this, happen, and it's just changed. The whole idea about the charging networks is still not there. So it's been a very big, reversal on that, where I guess is maybe part of this too is now kind of a rise of hybrids as kind of the stopgap. People who maybe, they're like, I can't afford an EV because it's just way too expensive, but I'll buy a hybrid because I still can do gas or electric or whatever, and I don't have to worry about range anxiety. That may be part of the story too. Is just that people didn't really realize, how little distance they get out of things. That, when you run air conditioners or heaters and do other things in the car, your range drops.
Right.
All of those functions draw on the battery, and so then your potential range drops, and then how long it really takes them to charge their car, and that all chargers are not equal, and all chargers are not actually working.
Right. That's right.
Unless you're Tesla.
And you can't, it takes 50 minutes to refuel. That's a non-starter, right? Until that's fixed, EVs are irrelevant to our.
Yeah, I mean, look, you're one of the biggest road trip guys I know. I mean, that would just be an absolute disaster. I mean,
do that. That would be so. Like driving home, I got to drive home Thursday, right? It's 1,200 miles. It takes about 19 hours. It's about 4 tanks of gas, right? So that means 4 times on this trip, I would have to stop and wait for an hour for my car. And that is if there's no line to the pump, to the charger, right?
Right.
So, and then it's even longer, right? You got some other guy up there with 40 minutes to go, and you wait his 40 minutes, and then you're 50 minutes, so you're sitting in a gas station for an hour and a half, like, as opposed to, 8 or 5 minutes to fill up and kids grab something to drink and let's go, right? I mean, that's how we're not going to go. They want you to go back in time on all this stuff. And it's like the other one is like, they're about to make another big push for mass transit, right? They want to, there's some proposal in the Department of Transportation now to establish these federally subsidized bus lines. So people wouldn't have to fly, and people could do this and that and the other and ride buses. It's like, I'm not going to some bus station. I'm taking off for Ohio myself, right? I'm halfway there by the time your bus comes to the station. They're not going to do that. I mean, every other aspect of life, it's more specifically tailored to you. Drugs, right? There's 50 million kinds of blood pressure medicines now, so we can all get the one that works with our system the best, right? Like Bernie Sanders always talk about the 300 kinds of deodorant, right? Because there's enough market for 300 kinds of deodorant, and people want the one they want. So but in cars, but in transportation, and the most important thing, because it involves your time of getting you to point A, point B, don't use your own solution. Use the communal solution, no matter how slow or inefficient it is. That makes no sense. People are not going to do that. And, until you improve that, you're not going to do it. You're not, but you're right. It was a no good, bad, terrible, awful year for EVs. Like every news thing that happened was bad for them. And I think that project, when Trump's being a dictator on day one, one of the things he's going to do is get rid of that mandate. I think that, and next president, whoever it is, has to do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that have to happen to get rid of there's so many bad things that have happened over the last 3 years under the Biden administration. But it really has, it's taken this, and the Investment Reduction Act, this whole thing, it's left this part of it in shambles. You just like, if you can't, if the car manufacturers are pulling back, and all of this stuff, and they're not going to get to all the charging stations they want to get to. There's so many things, as you were mentioning, if you find a station, if you have a Tesla, you can actually do this fairly reasonably, because Tesla, it shows you where the stations are and all these kinds of things. And they, anytime where there's Tesla chargers, there's always, I don't know, 6 to 12 of them or something like that. There's always a bunch of them. So the chances that you actually would have to wait are pretty slim. But if you're traveling through a lot of America, what are the odds you're going to find a gas station that's even got a couple of these? Gas station owners have got to be, the station owners, they need to be told why this is worth investing in, because this is an expensive thing to put money into. How are they going to make their money back? Is there going to be enough demand, people driving by that want to sit there, and charge their vehicles, while they're there? I don't know if you're Buc-ee's, which are not a ton of, I guess there's going to be one somewhere in Virginia, but if you're unless you're in like Texas and parts of the South, Buc-ee's I think is installing maybe like 12, on some of their newer stations and stuff like that. That's decent. But Buc-ee's also,
have you ever been to a
like
Buc-ee's? 12 machines would not come close to. I mean, they have 60 gas pumps, and they're always full. There's a line behind each one. So you can't sit. You can sit in the gas line because it's 5 minutes a car. You can't sit in one that's an hour a car. People are not going to do that. So, but Buc-ee's are coming to us. I think the one in Virginia may be open.
I don't know exactly I don't know where it was, but I've just been. I keep thinking it's like I need to go and time that. It's like, will it take me a couple hours to drive there? Is it worth it? Maybe.
Just do it when you're going that way. It's they're nice.
I was like, oh man, it's like I need a reason. I'll have to figure out manufacture something. I was like, honey, we have to go this way.
The other thing is, I think I read the last day or so. Buick. I mean, the GM is going to have to buy half of the Buick dealerships this year to get them to sell EVs because they said we won't sell them. So the GM's going to have to buy up all these dealerships.
Yeah. So what they did was that they basically told their dealers that they needed to invest in the EV revolution, right? They had to have the charging stations and all this stuff, kind of get ready, and it was good. It's like fast food or a lot of other restaurants. It requires an investment by the owner, right? Not by the corporation itself. These are just dealers that operate independently. And so, a lot of dealers are like, I don't see the economics of this. Right. So they said no. So GM then is going to basically buy them out. There's like 500 of them they're going to buy out of 1,000 or whatever. So the footprint of Buick dealerships, at least independently owned, will be reduced greatly, while GM sucks up the rest. And
it takes on a massive cost.
Yeah.
You got to hire all those people and all that. I mean,
I don't know. It's just so crazy. But I thought that story was interesting because it just kind of showed that, their dealers are pushing back. They're not all in on this at all. They see the numbers. They see how many EVs are being sold, and they know how much money is being lost per vehicle, and all these other things. And it's just not going to work. I've been telling my wife, and I really need to tell my son, but I mean, he bought a used Tesla. But one of the things he had done was that he looked around. He looked at a Rivian, which is one of the newer manufacturers. But you'd have to if you have a problem with your car, they put it on a carrier. They take it to Denver. They repair the car and bring it back to you. And it's like, then what? That's kind of crazy. But Lucid and Rivian have got some cool kind of looking vehicles. But but they also are losing a lot of money per vehicle, and they're not very big companies. They're late to the game, not unlike Elon Musk and Tesla, so they're burning cash. And my thing here is that those guys are going, they're not going to be able to survive long term. They're just burning up too much cash to be able to survive. And if you own a Lucid or a Rivian, you may wind up with something that becomes a very expensive brick, because if you have a problem with it, you just don't have that many dealers. And if they run out of money and they go out of business, then what do you do with your cars?
Right. That's right.
So, we got a comment here.
Yeah, that's right.
The Camaro.
Yeah.
That was that
sad.
was my first car as a teenager.
Oh my gosh.
1974 Camaro we bought from somebody out in Bethesda or something like that. So I love that car. It wasn't not very practical when I got married, so finally we did get rid of it.
But did help in meeting women.
Yeah, well, I had some friends of mine too who's like, okay, you got to do this. So I mean, it was an automatic, but then you change the gearbox basically so that it looks like a stick shift, but it's an automatic. You create like a stick shift thing in for that, and you put Kragers on there and everything like this. I mean, I had friends of mine, and then the glass pipe mufflers.
Yeah.
I mean, my friends made me spend a lot of money on that darn car, but it did help sell the car when I was ready to sell the car, though, because a kid in the neighborhood he wanted it, and I'm like, great, So I hope he was happy with it for however long he owned it and all that. Yeah. So I'll miss the Camaro just from sentimental standpoint. All right. So that's it for 2023. What about your predictions for 2024?
I predict that none of the Trump cases will come to trial before the election. That Biden will be impeached, and that the Ukraine-Russia war will end. Roughly the lines that it is now.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I mean, I think there was a story that Putin would entertain a ceasefire.
Yeah, I mean, he's got his path to Crimea. He's got his overland bridge. He's fine. They got what they wanted out of this. I think they would have taken, conquering Kiev and making it all, part of the Rus again or whatever. But I think he's satisfied with what he has, and it would cost a lot to keep going, and it's not worth it. You don't get much gain out of it.
Yeah, I mean, we're 22 months into this thing, roughly, right? I mean, so
and nothing's changing. It's it is what it is.
And we hit the winter, and so it's a bitter battle, just a slog.
Yeah, that's a possibility too.
You never know. You never know.
There's a lot of people out there who say that Biden will not be the candidate in November. But I will say this: if they're going to change, they got to change pretty soon, because it starts getting hard to get on ballots. Also, I guess for what it's worth, the ballot case is going nowhere. Colorado will be overturned, and those people will be shamed and excluded for the rest of their lives, as they rightly should be.
Well, I mean, Michigan just ruled in Trump's favor.
Yeah, right? Michigan just said, "Don't bug us with this garbage."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is nothing says democracy like jumping through legal hoops to take your opponent off the ballot.
On something that's extremely specious. I mean, this is like there's just nothing. There's nothing there. I mean, it's bothered me from day one. This whole insurrection. I was like, I'm sorry. Look,
right. There was no insurrection.
No,
ma'am. No, sir.
There was a lot of crazy, stupid stuff that happened that day, but it's not an insurrection. So sorry. You got to move on from that.
You got to move on.
That's just not going to work for me. That'll be interesting. I mean, okay. So wait a minute. I should write this down. Should I ever have to go back to my notes? Okay. So Biden impeached, right? What else? You said Hunter?
I said Trump will not go to trial on any of this stuff. And what else did I say?
We already forgot.
Election 2024. I think that it is now becoming possible that the Republicans could hold the House. Not necessarily, but they could.
Okay. All right. So this one, I mean, so I think, I mean, but I think this is, we know this as based on our discussion. I mean, so one of my predictions will be that Trump will win, and he probably will win fairly handily based on what we're seeing right now. I mean, something would have to dramatically change in my mind now for Trump not to run the table here. What we're seeing in the swing states, even with this gerrymander, garbage out of the Wisconsin Supreme Court and also out of New York, on that, I think Trump, I think people have seen 3 years of Biden here plus, and they're tired of it, and it's not going well, and he's just showing his mental acuity has just diminished greatly. That that I think that the swing will be back. And that Trump will win. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the swing states, if Trump doesn't do better in 2024 than he did in 2016.
The polling right now suggests that's true.
Yeah. So I think that's a distinct possibility. Now on the House, I don't know. I'm a little more pessimistic, partially because of the gerrymander issues that are popping up and some things like this. And I just also, this is to me another case of where the Republicans have not, to me, really shown, what they need to do that they can prove to the rest of the country. if I was the average Joe voter, that I have confidence in the Republican Party as a whole in the House that they could do what needs to be done. There I think all that infighting over the speakership and all this, I think that hurts them. Now, hopefully, the longer that the period that goes there, people will begin to forget that a little bit. Though the Democrats will probably bring that up. George Santos is fading away. That seat maybe goes back to the Democrats, that type of thing. So because they have such a narrow margin, I think they're going to have a hard time holding the House this time around. And I think they will gain in the Senate, but I don't think they're going to, I'm not sure that they're going to gain enough in the Senate to flip it. But this is one of those things. Elections are very funny. Momentum is going to be a huge thing. And, so
right.
trying to really predict those kind of races, 11 months out is still very difficult because there's so much that can happen that will just flip the script. And all of a sudden you just see Republicans have a surge. I'm just, part of this is that I'm not really convinced, Trump, I think, will win. I just don't know if he's got coattails, to
that'll be interesting to see. I think that, I think one of the things is the Republicans' favor is the calendar. So, the calendar is going to flip. And Mike Johnson is going to be able to say, before the election, or he could be able to say that, we had a chaotic year, and then we got our leadership together. I mean, what are they trying to do now? They're trying to pass the Defense Authorization Act, right? So he is starting through the process of separate appropriations bills. There's no end of the year omnibus, right? There's no tax extenders this year. They all went home. So they're saying, we're going to do things differently. We're not just going to throw a bunch of stuff in the bills and vote for them so we can go home for Christmas. Right. Okay. Right. So my other point is, I think that Trump will make the point that if you don't elect a Republican Congress, the whole term is going to be, investigations and impeachments and whatever they can think to do to throw sand in the gears, right? And I think you can make that case if the House, takes up the appropriations bills, runs a clean ship, and it doesn't matter if they pass, right? It matters they pass the House, and the Senate, you can just say, okay, we passed 12 bills, and the Senate sat on them. The Democrats in the Senate blocked them, right? So they didn't make progress. We did, and Trump coming along saying, if you don't want, 10,000, BS investigations, elect a Republican Congress. And, there's some, you're right. There's some things that militate against it, numbers, and they, if they redistrict it, in New York, that's 4 seats, right? That will change hands if it's done later. The other side of that is, New York is trending red, right? It's, we don't know. We don't know how far red, right? But it's going in the red direction, not the blue direction right now. So you don't know. Maybe you can stop some of that momentum. And I think in the Senate, West Virginia is going to change from Democrat to Republican almost certainly. There's now a pretty good chance Arizona will change from Democrat to Republican because, I guess Sinema is now technically an independent, but she's in third. The Democrat is a distant second, and Kari Lake is run away with it right now. She's at an 11-point lead. I don't know if that'll hold. She rubs people the wrong way too, so remains to be seen. I don't know how much trouble Rick Scott is in Florida. It could be more than we think. But I would like to think there's enough Republican momentum in Florida to carry him. But it's possible. It's not. You can't yet say it is likely, but it is possible.
Yeah, I mean the math. There's still a mathematical possibility. I mean, there's things are going there that could do the job there, but we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I think West Virginia. West Virginia is a given. Arizona would be very interesting to flip that back. I think. Sinema's decision to go independent, that was pretty much the end of the Democrat. They were going to. She basically gave that seat away, I think.
Yeah, and it's becoming increasingly possible that Fetterman will flip.
Yeah.
Because he's, he seems to have more of a voting base now in the Republican Party than the Democrat Party. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, the reactions lately are like Fetterman is acting more like a conservative or, you know, a little more than he is a Democrat at this point in time. It's like, hey, you know, maybe we ought to target him to talk about things. Is that
Yeah,
the guy that we pilloried so much? We've kind of grown to like a little bit
yeah.
about,
Well,
right?
welcome aboard, buddy. You know.
Yeah, yeah. We'll take it. We'll take that. Definitely. All right. We still got let's go ahead and just go through a few more things, I guess, and then we'll wrap it up. Um, so, you know, we talked a little bit about, we mentioned, you know, this whole thing about Colorado, but then Trump, you know, the Supreme Court basically gave him a victory on this whole thing that Jack Smith wanted to expedite this issue on immunity, and he didn't get it, which is good for Trump.
Good for Trump. I think that, you know, the one thing is, like, everybody thinks it's a slam dunk that the Court of Appeals will rule against him. I don't know what they're going to rule. They could, and then he can ask. You know, it's a 3-judge panel at first, and then if they say no to him, then he can ask for unbanked review. So the whole court, you know, all 12 or 13 or whatever, would weigh in on it. You know, it's unlikely he will win either of those, and then the Supreme Court can decide, look at the decisions, and decide whether to take the case. Right? I think the Supreme Court is, you know, the left is banking on the Supreme Court denying cert. And they're, you know, that they'll look at the appellate court ruling and say that's fine with us. But, you know, I think they're going to want to be heard on the. That's true. That's one thing we have not talked about is immigration. A massive amount of negative attention that goes to Democrats over what has happened on immigration. You cannot argue that things got better under Biden on immigration, energy, inflation, the economy. Right, you just can't. So, but the point I was making was, help me, that they're not. You know, there's a lot of room for this to improve for Republicans. There's not a whole lot. I mean, the you know, price of gas is coming down and so forth. He has a few things going his way, but most of the potential for positives are on the Republican side.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, because, and this goes back to what you were saying about prediction, you know, on Trump. I mean, you know, the cases, the left, I think, is going to, you know, they're striking out on trying to pin Trump down with all these legal cases, and, you know, generally people don't care because Trump support is very high, and so they're, you know, they're not going to get the political, you know. Whatever they wanted out of this, you know, they're trying to knock him down a peg or whatever, take him out of the race. It's not going to happen. Yeah, you know, if Trump plays, if the Trump people play this right, it'll be just fine. They'll be able to get rid of these things, and he'll be able to focus more on the election and everything like this. I mean, the cases really are
They
just
get to like July, right, and they're asking the court to rule on this in July, which is not impossible now, right?
right.
I mean, how can you put a guy on trial 3 months before the election, right, and not call it election interference?
Yeah.
I mean, that's, you know, that was a huge decision, not necessarily in its legal moment or whatever, but in its the capacity of it to gum up the works until after the election. And they really can't argue. You know, their only argument for rushing it is election interference, right? So it can interfere in the election. That's the sole reason for why it has to go this fast. Normally, these cases take 2 years to come to trial. You know, there's something that he's trying to do in 6 or 7 months. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Because you want it to interfere in the election. That's what you want this to do.
Yeah, here's another comment we got from John. Yeah,
that's true. That's right.
Yeah.
That runs through the Harvard story, runs through the Israel story, runs through, you know, all these. There's a lot of stuff going on now. You know, books in schools and all that kind of stuff. You know, they banned books. No, they didn't. They said don't put a book in a school library that's pornography. You know, and those guys go to the school board meetings and they read the book, and the school board says, "Stop talking like that in here." And I'm like, "Okay, take it out of my kid's library." So,
all right. So we're about out of time. So give you a minute and a half to kind of wrap it up.
Okay. I wanted to, you had on there about the fastest growing states and the slowest growing. You know, there's no better exemplar of the rightness of conservative policy than to look at the fastest and slowest growing states in the country population wise. Fastest growing are Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee, Arizona, Virginia, Colorado, Utah. Almost all governed on pretty stridently conservative principles. Even Colorado, people say, well, Colorado's kind of a leftist state. Well, there's something called the TABOR, Taxpayer Bill of Rights there. So, which means, you know, they have to spend like conservatives. Virginia is obviously moving to the right. The losers in population are California, Hawaii, Illinois, Louisiana, New York, Oregon, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. Only one that would, you know, seem to be a conservative state there is Louisiana. But Louisiana is, you know, it's got like 10.5% sales tax, right? It's a high tax, high spend state, and kind of always has been. It's, you know, it was, you know, the state constitution of Alabama was written by the lumber companies, and, you know, lobbyists for the lumber companies. Here, you know, Huey Long had a lot of influence, and he was as far left as anybody that's ever been elected to office in the U.S. So I look forward to a year in which those kind of things truly get explained to the American people in a way that they cannot ignore.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed the conversation. Thanks for your comments as always. One more comment.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
You got to throw that in there too. All right. As always, please stay safe and stay well. And remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. God bless America and Happy New Year. We will see you again in the new year. And then we'll just kind of see how our predictions go as the year goes on. We'll try to revisit that a year from now. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot. We'll see you again.